Hey everyone, this is jlhmac for OP Poker. Today we're going to be looking at a session review played by Ed K. It's a little bit different to our usual setup because Ed K is a streamer. We will post his link to his stream down below. Ed K, I think, generally plays MTTs and maybe some spin and goes, but he's new to Power Up, so we're going to look at his play, his thought process, and what areas he can improve in. Without further ado, I'll start the game.
It's a $1 Power Up. I have the Engineer and the Upgrade. Quite not bad cards to start with, but quite high in power. It's going to fold.
Yep, Engineer and Upgrade. You can't get much better than that to start with. They play in combination really well together. So Engineer obviously lets you pick from free choices, and then you can, if you need to, you can put it into your hand with Upgrade. So it's one of the better combinations in the game at the moment. So he folds the first hand. Makes sense. He only had 8-4 offsuit.
Get a clone, which we really need to try and get rid of as soon as possible, if we can.
Okay, yeah. He's recognised that clone is not the best starting power, but with Engineer and Upgrade, it's completely fine, I think, to keep it in your hand as long as you need to. The reason for that is, as soon as, let's say you were to use Engineer and you don't need to upgrade, you just need to put that card out. You can just clone the Engineer, and then the next turn you already have the combination again. So I think clone is fine once you've got such a nice
and see how we
combination of the other two.
Pair and a backdoor flush. We'll just call, I think. And as we picked up lots of equity on the river, I'm going to use the Engineer, and then I'm going to clone the Engineer.
Okay, this seems like a good start. Being able to find yourself a straight flush. Not bad at all. Second hand, straight flush. I like that, like cloning the Engineer, it's good.
I'm just going to call. See whether they understand that they might need to get rid of one, if they've even got the card to do it.
Yeah, so at the moment, the only power card that can get rid of his straight flush would be Disintegrate. So, given that the CZ has 3 powers, and there are 9 powers in total, there is a 1 in 3 chance that Ed's straight flush could be destroyed.
And then the trouble is, if I raise, then I reopen the action, and
That's true.
So I'm just tempted to flat this because I don't really want the board to change. I'm just going to...
Okay, yeah. If you're really worried about your opponent using Disintegrate, if you go all in, you lock the board. So what happens when you lock the board is all of the community cards that have already come out get highlighted in red. And when that happens, people are unable to change those cards. They can't destroy it, they can't change it. They can only affect cards that will come on later streets. So given you have a straight flush, you have to at least raise all in. At least. But you could just raise as well, I think. If CZ was really worried about that 7 of clubs, he probably would have disintegrated it earlier. And he only has a 1 in 3 chance of having it in the first place. So yeah, I would most definitely look at going all in there.
Cool. Let's see what they've got. Ace 7. Interesting. I mean, I could have easily have raised, obviously, but trouble is reopening the action. Then gives them the opportunity to destroy some of the cards.
Yeah, I guess Ed isn't aware of the all-in board locking situation. So if you do go all in, you do get some protection in that people cannot mess with the cards that have already come out. So yeah, I think that's one thing that Ed needs to be made aware of as quickly as possible.
Which can't be good. Although it does feel a bit weak just to call in that spot with a straight flush. So we'll see. Well, a really good card for their hand. And taking one of our outs, obviously, if we were to upgrade to a 3rd, then the chances of getting a 7 is less likely. I think we'll just try and check this down.
Okay, so in this hand, straight away he used X-Ray. I think it's fine to use it, I guess, yeah. I personally probably wouldn't, but I think it's fine. He sees the 7 of clubs and then sees that the flop connects heavily. So, yeah, I like trying to check down and hoping that he hasn't hit anything. Seems to be what Ed's doing. Very possible. Oh no.
Good enough.
$7-5. I think I would just let go. Yeah, I think there's no reason to play the X-ray. Even if you see both players have a 2, you probably don't want to be playing 7-5. You just want to get up to 10 points again so that you can use the combination of engineer and upgrade. Until you're at 10 points, you're kind of at a disadvantage, especially to CZ9344, because he has 15 points, so he can use a combination of all 3 cards, which crushes you when you can only use 1 or 2 card combos. So yeah, your main objective at this point should be to get to 10 points.
Just cycling through the X-ray.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, especially when you have a lot of points or you're looking for a combination, X-ray is a great card to cycle and can be very useful. So yeah, but in this spot I would prefer to just get up to 10 points before you use it.
Just check and see a flop. We know they did this last time with... Was it a pair?
Yeah, it was top pair on the flop, and then he rivered 2.
And wait for a better opportunity. Obviously, pocket 8's a pretty strong hand.
Yep. Yeah, it's a kind of an odd spot because pocket 8s do work very well, but not in combination with your powers. In general, there obviously is a strong hand. but it does play harder post-flop than in standard hold'em games. So you have to be very careful on how to play them. I think he can't do anything but raise though. It is possible that Ed K could think about going all in but one chip here. The reason for that is oftentimes the opponent has to be aware and afraid of the fact that you could see the flop and EMP before they can do anything. So let's say you were to have EMP in your hand and a scanner or an engineer or disintegrate or upgrade. You can use that power first, then EMP and go all in, and they have no chance to use their powers, and you've just used everything you need to for all the chips. So I think that's another
just about
opportunity.
got enough points that I can use engineer and scanner at the same time, which might come in useful.
Yeah, engineer and scanner is going to be the most useful two cards. When you have pocket ace, you can maybe want to look for the set if they really put pressure on you, or keep the cards low. So yeah.
I suspect that they don't really know what they're doing.
The fold. So yeah, now you've got the 10-point, so you can do the combo. You should be playing really wide now that you can do that, and putting a lot of pressure on your opponents, because if you need to, you can really affect
to raise
the board. So unfortunately, that's a flop that
not a very good flop, and
doesn't connect with you in any way.
Which they've been doing quite a lot, actually.
I really wouldn't mind Ed doing anything here. I think raising is reasonable. I think folding is reasonable. I think calling is also okay. Yeah.
Or even any equity at all. I guess I let it go, but
yeah,
I am mindful that I just min betting out with quite possibly a lot wider range. But I don't necessarily think I've got the cards to combat it.
No, you didn't. No.
On that particular flop.
So again, you haven't hit at all. Just give up in the pot.
So scanner, peek at the next two cards, deck cards, is all very well. But you have to have, I'm going to guess you're going to have some kind of equity in order to do that. And choose the next three cards from the options, from three options. Again, I'm going to need some kind of equity in order to play that.
Yep.
I'd like to see what CZ ends up with, because these little min bets, I'm suspecting, aren't that strong. Wow. Quite a strong play by Tenking.
Yep. Quite risky too. CZ has at least the 10. Could have anything with the second card. Especially as they did see that.
Let's go for an upgrade.
Okay, so This is a mistake that I see a lot of new players making, and that is the use of upgrade pre-flop when the pot is still really quite small. In general, upgrade and reload, so these are the cards, these are the powers that can affect and improve your whole cards. In general, you really want to use them at later stages in the hand if possible, so the turn or the river especially, because you have much more outs to hit and you have much more, you know, if you need to get rid of both cards or one card, you have many more combinations to hit. So yeah,
Braden can get better than
I would say this is one of the biggest mistakes that new players make.
4. Ace Jack is pretty good.
And again, I think this is another mistake that you can make a lot, which is when you have more power points than your opponent, it doesn't make sense for you to want to go all in. Because you have the opportunity to affect the boards, if need be, much more than they do. So you have 10 points. You can still use Engineer. You can still use Scanner. You can still use both. So if you were to go all in but one chip, this is far stronger at play than going directly all in, because then you can still affect the board cards if you need to, when all the chips are in play.
Just going to shove 10 big blinds, I think, is probably the best thing to do.
And yeah, so Ed K has now lost his combination, which was really useful and powerful, just to win the 150 chips of the opponent. So I would suggest that it's not worth it. Next hand, you got 7 free suited. I would recommend using X-Ray. If you see really low cards, I think you should, of the opponents, I think you should be
use the X-Ray
opening. 6 and 7 might not be low enough. But I wouldn't be that upset if he did decide to raise. But he does fold. So in that scenario, I agree with the idea of cycling through the X-Ray, because you really are looking for the reload or the upgrade. But unfortunately we're Intel. Again, I like the play of using Intel straight away. Again, as a main use of it is to cycle, but of course it gives an extra advantage.
So we know we're going to make a pair on the turn. But CZ has decided that... See, now he's all in. He can't use any powers. So 8, 9... So I'm tempted to use Scanner and see whether I make a straight or not.
I would, even though we can just see that he's going to hit the straight, I would highly discourage this kind of play. You're only looking for 4 outs, so Engineer would be the better choice. But this isn't the spot to do it, because you have a player acting behind you and they have 9 points. So 10 King can affect these cards that you now either want to keep or discard. So you see that you're going to hit a straight. Now you're probably going to want to call all your chips. So there would be a lot of chips in the pot for 10 King to win. If he has any piece of this board, he's probably going to use a bunch of cards, maybe reload or upgrade or scanner or engineer, and all of these can affect the cards that you've just picked. So I would highly discourage trying to find the straight when there is someone to act behind you who can use powers.
And we do.
Yeah, this would end badly in most scenarios.
So
fortunately for Ed K, 10 King decides to not use any powers and call with just one pair. This is a very soft game, so if you aren't watching, if you aren't playing Power Up, sorry, while you're watching this, I think you should get in on these games because they're clearly very, 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 very soft.
We win.
So now Ed is in a great spot.
Incredible. It's going to cycle.
So he's using the X-ray for the purposes of cycling through it. I would say that you don't need to do that while you only have 2 powers. The reason for this is quite simple. The next hand you're going to get 3 powers and you'll have 9 points. So it's very possible that you could get something like Scanner and then you could use Engineer and Scanner on top of it. So yeah, there's no need to cycle it this turn. You could just do it next turn.
Because it's not that great, and I'm just going to fold. It's also surprised 10 King overcalled when he knew that we knew what cards were coming up.
Yeah, very surprised. So the 8-4 I would just automatically fold. You're going to get Engineer and Upgrade and the combination to use it, the power points to use it. So.
And I'm just going to fold and gain some extra points for in the next hand. If 10 King shoves, I think I've got to upgrade and see if I can get a better hand. Tempted to do it anyway.
Okay, so 10 King limps, and Ed's sitting there with an ace. Generally, what I would do in this spot would be to go all in but 1 chip of 10 King stack. So at the moment, 10 King has 946 chips. I would make it 945 chips. The reason for this is simple. If 10 King decides that he wants to go with whatever he's limped with, and it comes back to us, we can use Engineer and then upgrade, knowing that we're playing for stacks, and then we could maybe find ourselves aces or Ace King. Using the points when the pot is small doesn't make any sense, because you can put all the pressure of the fact that you can use these points later and then maybe not even have to use them. So yeah, I would play it like that. Now you've put a position where 10 King now has the advantage and opportunity to use the powers last. So but with Ace King, obviously you're not too worried, especially when he picks and puts into his hand. So when he picks the 10, you have to presume he has pocket 10s or possibly ace 10, but even if he did have an ace and he decides to pick the 10, I think it's quite bad, because he already knows one of his outs is being destroyed. So yeah, if I was in king 10 spot, I wouldn't do that. Yep. So unless he had a very, very bad ace, I can't see why I would pick the 10.
We get it in ahead and win.
Yeah, so let's say 10 king had ace 2 or ace 5 and engineers and sees 4, 10, 10. It makes much more sense to just pick the 4, because now you've also given yourself the possibility of hitting the wheel draw in the future, so ace through to 5, rather than picking the 10, which you already know one of them pair outs is gone. So yeah, but yeah, that was the first game that we've seen Ed play. I think he played 1 or 2 before that, because he knew about the idea of cycling through cards. But overall, the 2 things that he needs to look at are specifically what locking of the board does once you're all in, and how to use upgrade and reload, because they gain much more power, they gain much more strength once there are more cards that are on the community board, because you can hit so many more variations of pairs. Yeah, but overall, I think that was a good start by Ed. Clearly is aware of hand strengths in this game, being very different to normal Hold'em, and he won, so that's all good. If you're interested in learning more about Power Up strategy and joining a community of like-minded members, make sure to go to our website at www.op.poker.contact. This has been jlhmac for OP Poker. Ciao for now.